feel better on the weekend. Give my life a better meaning. Let me stay where I'm in phase. I feel better on the weekend. I feel better on the weekend. Give my life a better meaning. Let me stay where I'm in phase. I feel better on the weekend.
Welcome to Cyber Threat Intel, your go-to source for the latest updates, news, and insights on cyber threats. Our goal is to arm you with the knowledge to protect yourself in the digital age, whether you're a cybersecurity professional or just curious about the threats lurking in the digital shadows. Make sure to subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast listening platform to join us on the front lines of cybersecurity, because in the world of cyber threats, knowledge is power. Welcome. This is episode 6 of Cyber Threat Intel. This is March 26, 2024. I'm your host, John Good. Welcome if you're just joining for the first time. If you've joined before, welcome back. One of the things that we're doing for the first time with this show is that we're not just streaming on YouTube today. We're actually streaming on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. So all three platforms in an effort to reach as many people as possible. So you may be joining for the first time. This may be the first time that you've seen it, but I'm definitely growing a large audience on those other platforms. So depending on which platform you want to see it on, that's where you can watch it. Just trying to make it as accessible as possible. So first of all, get ready for the show. So if you're just preparing, you're just getting on your computer, grab a drink, grab a snack, something, and get ready. The show lasts about a half an hour or so. And then if we have a decent turnout, decent questions, things like that, then we'll also do an after show for after the content for this as well. So if you're interested overall in finding out the show, trying to find it, watch it, whatever the case may be, live video format or live stream format. Again, this particular episode is on YouTube on the John Good Cyber YouTube channel. It's on my page on LinkedIn. So the John Good page on LinkedIn, as well as John Good Cyber on Twitter. So any of those sources, you'll be able to find this live stream, and we'll see how it goes, see if that works out, and if we want to keep putting it on all the platforms, or if we just want to keep it on YouTube, because that's typically where all my video content lives. But those are the different places that you can find it. If you just want to listen to the audio only format, then you can go to cyberthreatintel.com. That lists all the different platforms that we're on, but we're on all the popular podcasting platforms. So that's going to be your Spotify, your iTunes, and whatever else, right? Like there's a whole bunch of different podcasting platforms, but we're on a whole bunch of them. And if you go to cyberthreatintel.com, then you can see all those listed on there as well. Also, one key thing about cyberthreatintel.com is that if you go there, you'll be able to see all the articles that we cover in this episode, but there will also be other articles that are on there as well. So other articles that are worth reading, they're important information, but they weren't necessarily ones that made it onto the show. You'll also be able to see the articles from the previous shows. So you can just go on there, you can see all the highlights, and if there's any like notes or anything like that for the article, then those will all be on there as well. So you can definitely do that. As far as certifications, if you have any professional certifications, things like Security Plus, CISSP, whatever, right? Like one of those things, then CPEs, CEUs, continuing education credits, those are basically a requirement of a lot of certifications these days. So you have to have so many credits, attend classes, watch webinars, things like that. But you can use this as a half a CPE. So if you're trying to maintain those, this is a really good way, easy way to maintain those with professional credits. So definitely make sure that you claim this and that you don't lose out on the effort that you're putting in and by watching these and staying up to date, right? That's a key thing about this profession, is making sure that you are up to date. So also, before we actually dive into the intel, I want to just take a second and talk about one of our sponsors here, and then I'll catch you on the other side and we'll start looking at the articles. Are you tired of overpaying for cybersecurity training? Are you interested in training from industry professionals? Are you looking for cybersecurity career services? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then cybertrainingpro.com is the perfect platform for you. At Cyber Training Pro, we're a one-stop shop for all your cybersecurity needs. We can train you for industry certifications or just improve your overall knowledge and skills in a certain area. Unlike other platforms, we don't stop there. We can also coach you throughout your career, practice your interview skills, or create a high-performing resume with our career services. CybertrainingPro.com isn't just another training platform. Students get exclusive access to our private community, where we go beyond training courses to provide additional content, tips and tricks, and engagement with both other students and staff. Look, by the year 2025, there could be as many as 3.5 million job openings in cybersecurity. With so much opportunity, Why not maximize your career potential with a platform that cares about your success? Come join us at cybertrainingpro.com and start building your future today. All right. If you are a company and you're interested in sponsoring content, or you're just interested in sponsoring content, then make sure to check out the description, especially on LinkedIn and YouTube, because there is more details about that and how you can get in contact with us about sponsoring content, whether it's for cyber threat intel or for other content that is put on the YouTube channel. A lot of different opportunities, but check that out, and that's how you can kick that process off. So with that being said, looks like we're ready to go ahead and dive into the articles here. So let's kick it off here. All right. So first article here. And let's get this full screen here. So first article, UK blames China for 2021 hack targeting millions of voters' data. The UK government has called out China state-affiliated threat actors for carrying out hacking campaigns against UK institutions and political figures in 2021. The House of Commons was briefed on March 25 by UK Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden about cyber attacks that accessed the personal data of millions of voters in August 2021. Also a comment here, Chinese-backed threat actors have been blamed following an investigation led by the UK National Cyber Crime Centre, NCSC, which assessed that the attack originated from China. So with elections in general, right? Let's just step back and talk about that. This is why, people are really concerned about doing things with elections, campaigns, and really just digitizing that ability, right? To create digital systems that you can vote for, because, like anything can be hacked. That's really a concern just in general, right? We see these voting machines tested out at places like Black Hat and DEF CON and those kinds of things. So it's a real concern. Now, in August 2023, the UK's Electoral Commission revealed that an attack on voters' data occurred in August 2021, so fairly recently, a couple years ago. The incident was first discovered in October 2022, so they found out about it after the fact, after the election had already occurred, right? So that's kind of a bad thing, right? That's not good for elections. The threat actor had broken into the election watchdog's email and control systems and gained access to copies of the electoral registers. Although the commission said that at the time it could not identify how much data was compromised, its register contains the details of approximately 40 million people. So not only were they able to get into these systems, but they were able to access data on 40 million people approximately, right? Like that's a ton of data. That's a ton of insight into what those specific individuals are thinking, right? Obviously, with that much data, you're not necessarily looking at a specific individual in a lot of cases. You're looking at trends, or you're trying to identify kind of those trends about that data, right? Like, what are these people thinking? What are they voting for? What issues matter, right? Because if you're trying to influence an election, that can be a huge insight, especially at that granular of a statistic. Now, there's a quote here: the data in combination with other data sources would highly likely be used by the Chinese intelligence service for a range of purposes, including large-scale espionage and transnational repression of perceived dissidents and critics in the UK, the NCSC added in a public statement. So people that have left China, that maybe showed their hate or their dislike for the Chinese government, those kinds of things, right? Especially in those kind of regimes, if people have family members that are back in China, for example, well, then the Chinese government can go after those people. They can make life difficult for their family members, right? Like there's all kinds of bad things that especially can happen to people that still have ties in the country. So definitely recommend checking out this article if elections and election security is of interest to you. But of course, there is a section here too about China denying their involvement, right? We don't think that they're going to just come out and, basically, yes, accept that they were involved. But yeah, definitely an article worth reading. Next article here: over 100 organizations targeted in recent Strela Stealer attacks. Over 100 organizations in the US and EU have been targeted in recent large-scale phishing campaigns distributing the information stealer malware known as Stealer, Palo Alto Networks reports. First documented in November 2022, Stealer harvests credentials from the well-known email clients and sends them to an attacker-controlled command and control C2 server specified in the malware's configuration. Over the past 5 months, Palo Alto's networks identified multiple large-scale campaigns carrying attachments, deploying the info stealer in the form of a malicious DLL. So we see all kinds of attacks and malware campaigns and things like that that are carried out towards email, right? Like they are carried out through email because a lot of people have email. It can be a relatively low sophisticated attack because if you find, Bob Smith that has, and that's not a real person that I'm referencing, right? Just let's be clear. But you find somebody that is not really technically savvy and you send them an email, carefully crafted attachment, something like that. They execute whatever it is. And all of a sudden that system is now compromised. So email is definitely a favorite attack vector for attackers, right? It's silly, right? Tailored to local languages, the spam messages were mainly sent to organizations in the high-tech sector with entities across finance, professional and legal services, manufacturing, government, utilities, and energy, insurance, and construction targeted as well. So we see this, with any attack, right? A lot of times they'll go after a lot of different industries. Sometimes it's very targeted towards certain sectors, but if it's a mass scale kind of thing, they're going to target as many people as they possibly can. Unlike early Strela Stealer campaigns that featured ISO attachments, so things like ISO files would be like an operating system kind of image or something like that, containing link and HTML files designed to fetch the malware from a remote server. The recent attacks involved a zip attachment that contained a JavaScript file, designed to drop the final payload in the form of a DLL, right? So we see this a lot, especially the initial infection. That's typically not the full payload, right? Like that usually is a multi-stage step or script or something that is going to initiate something, typically connecting with a command and control server, a C2 server, some other location that the attacker controls. And then that then kicks off even more processes, right? And that's just because they want to get that initial infection and then they want to reach out to their server, start downloading the rest of their tools, right? Like that's typically how it goes. The attacks are also characterized by updated obfuscation meant as an anti-analysis technique and the removal of debugging symbols, strings observed in earlier attacks, likely to prevent detection, relying on previously generated signatures or patterns. So if you're not familiar with kind of these attacks and how they're detected in a lot of cases, they have these signatures or these patterns that are identified because it's a common strand of malware or whatever it is, right? And so they're identified via a signature, which is basically a pattern. And then these softwares, these anti-malware softwares, antivirus softwares, a lot of these softwares work like this. And they have this database where they compare this new signature that they identify on some system against this database. And if there's a match, well, then it's a known malware, right? And that's kind of how that works. So that's why this obfuscation of these attacks of malware is dangerous because, if you can change the signature and it's not in the database, well, then it's obviously not going to be detected. And the longer that it's not detected, the more harm that this malware could cause. All right, next article here, Russian APT group targets German politicians. Security researchers have warned Western political parties to be on their guard after uncovering a new cyber espionage campaign from Russian actors APT29. Thought to be a part of Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, SVR, the group, aka Cozy Bear, Nobilium, has historically focused on diplomatic targets, but was also linked to raids on COVID-19 vaccine developers and the infamous SolarWinds campaign. However, since February 2024, it has been conducting a phishing campaign against German political parties, according to Mandia. Victims received an email spoof to appear as if it was sent by the Christian Democratic Union, CDU, party inviting them to a dinner reception on March 1. The link contained within the email directed victims to a malicious zip file containing a root saw dropper hosted on an actor-controlled compromised website, right? So this is basically what we just talked about. Whenever an attacker tries to go after victims, right, a lot of times they're going to use email. That's just pretty typical. And again, that initial infection vector, so that threat vector or attack vector, is typically not the full payload. Usually it's going to do something, and then it's going to cause that victim system to reach out to something, because especially if they can get in initially, right, a lot of that traffic that is going to go out from there then is going to be trusted by those protection systems. So like if you had a firewall, you might not allow a lot of that traffic to just come in unsolicited. But if a system on the inside is trying to reach out, well, you might trust that, right? And there's a whole bunch of issues wrong with that, and why we start looking at zero trust and those kinds of things. But that happens, right? That's pretty common. Rootsaw, aka NV Scout, is a first stage payload commonly used by APT29. This in turn delivered a new backdoor variant dubbed WineLoader. This was first spotted in late January 2024 in an operation targeting diplomatic entities in Czechia, Germany, India, Italy, Latvia, and Peru, Mandiant said. WineLoader contains several features consistent with other APT29 malware families such as Burn Banner, Muskie Beat, and Beat Drop, indicating a common developer, the report claimed. So just another thing that we see, right? A lot of these malware developers, they tend to create a lot of different malware. Maybe they change the malware, they change the signature, they change what it does, they add functionality, right? Like they're in the business of making better malware, right? So they want improvements. Maybe they even crowdsource their improvements to other malicious people, right? Or other people in the dark web. But that's pretty common. And then you start to see, that's kind of where this attribution aspect comes into play for cyber threat intel. So when you start attributing it to certain people, you start identifying certain patterns, certain usage of code libraries, how they do things, right? Like all of those things are kind of clues, right? So if you were a detective and you were trying to put together the, some kind of crime and the story of what happened, you would look for clues, right? It's the same kind of idea. You're looking for clues in that malware so you can attribute to certain people. You can understand what they're trying to do. Then you understand that attacker and what they're actually after. And then you can basically react to those kinds of things, right? That's kind of really the story of what you're doing with a lot of this stuff, right? Because you're not going to stop a lot of 0 days or initial infection vectors, especially if you don't understand who your threat is or who your enemy is. So let's keep moving here. All right. So next article here, Google's new AI search results promotes sites pushing malware scams. Google's new AI-powered search generative experience algorithms recommends scam sites that redirect visitors to unwanted Chrome extensions, fake iPhone giveaways, that's, delightful, browser spam subscriptions, and tech support scams. Earlier this month, Google began rolling out a new feature called Google Search Generative Experience, SGE, in its search results, which provides AI-generated quick summaries for search queries, including recommendations for other sites to visit related to the query. However, an SEO consultant, so a search engine optimization consultant, Lily Ray, first spotted Google's SGE is recommending spammy and malicious sites within its conversational responses, making it easier for users to fall for scams. So I don't know about you, but I know there's a lot of people out there that will go onto Google, they'll search for whatever, right? And what will happen is they will trust whatever results come back, right? They will use that priority or that ranking as far as where the sites fall on the list or the results. And they will say, okay, the first result is the most trusted. The 10th result is less trusted than that first one, right? Right or wrong, a lot of people do that. So that is why this is actually pretty dangerous, because if people are doing that, well, that's not great, right? Like that can cause a lot of issues for companies, especially, but definitely for individuals. So you can see the sample site here, sample search image that they provided. And there's a whole bunch of random websites that I'm not going to say because I don't want live stream platforms to get mad at me, but you can see these are very spammy kind of websites. Keep scrolling down here, just more stuff that it's talking about as far as these search results. So it's just a very dangerous thing. They also say once we subscribed to some of the notifications, we began to receive spam with advertisements for tech support, affiliate scams, fake giveaways, and other unwanted sites. So this is one of those things where you just have to train your users. I would say that even if you're just in a company and it's not necessarily, security awareness training for your company, even though it is clearly something that could cause an issue, I would say that you should try to train your users in general about this, right? Because they're going to get affected by these scams for sure. And you don't want them to fall victim. You want them to be more educated, especially at home, right? You don't want those bad habits to spill into the workplace. You don't want them to have bad habits at the workplace in general. So it's a good idea in general to just kind of train people about these things or make sure they're aware of it because it will affect them, right? All right, let's keep moving here. And again, just a reminder, if you go to cyberthreatintel.com, again, cyberthreatintel.com, you'll be able to see the audio platforms that we're on, so the podcasting platforms. You'll also be able to see the articles that we're covering. There is a feed that you can go to, and you'll be able to see all these articles, as well as other articles that are added that we don't cover, and articles from the previous episodes as well. All right, next article here. U.S. must establish independent military cyber service to fix alarming problem. The current model for military services providing forces to U.S. Cyber Command is broken, and the only way to fix it is to create an independent cyber force, a new report asserts. The inefficient division of labor between the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps prevents the generation of a cyber force ready to carry out its mission. Recruitment suffers because cyber operations are not a top priority for any of the services. The current system compounds these force generation challenges. Each of the services has developed its own solution, leading to both inconsistencies and shortcomings. So, with this article, really what it's saying is that, should there be a separate cyber force? So we have, again, the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, these other branches that, have certain missions. They do certain things. Obviously, like the Navy is water and, Air Force, air, and all those kinds of things, right? But because of cybersecurity and it's so specialized, should that be its own entire branch? Now, we've seen a lot with the military specifically that they've had struggles just being able to recruit people for the cyber workforce, to upskill people that are, trying to cross-train or do cybersecurity, right? Especially people that are very seasoned, right? It's not so much about people that are in the military and they've been in for a contract already and they're trying to, stay in. It's more about bringing in experts from outside of the ranks that want to serve their nation, right? And so we've seen things like the direct commissioning. That's been a thing in the last couple of years. It's been talked about a lot. And a lot of it is because there's such a difference in pay scales, right? If you look at somebody that is coming in brand new, let's say they're just trying to come in as a brand new officer in any one of these services, right? Their pay is not going to be anywhere near it would be if they had, like, let's say 10 years of experience in the career field in cybersecurity. It's just not even going to be comparable, right? Because they're so drastically different. And that's the kind of issue that they face. So I think it was up to a colonel, I want to say, that these direct commissioning things could bring people to. But, it's a lot of struggles, right? And so they have to figure out ways that they can perform their cyber mission and develop people and recruit other people to come in. So there's a lot of issues around it. It says, while not all interviewees believe the creation of a new service is the answer, everyone agrees that the status quo is not sustainable. Even if not everyone we interviewed agreed that necessarily that the solution is to establish an independent uniform service for cyberspace, Logan told reporters ahead of the report's release. Proponents of an independent cyber service argued the cyber operators have no distinct identity as they're still members of their respective services, as well as that there are readiness issues associated with each service resourcing their cyber contributions differently lexicon and pay scales are different for the members of each service, and that command and control structures are confusing, right? So again, you have these different branches, they have their different missions and different things that they have to do. And we even have like the space unit now, right? And but you basically have these conflicting priorities of what they need to do per the mission. And it's like, okay, I remember one thing that they were talking a lot about was like physical readiness, right? So somebody working in a cyber job in the military, for instance, do they need to be at the same physical capability or physical, in physical shape as somebody that is going to go on the front lines and actually fight it out with, bad guys, right? That's a conflict that I remember being talked about with this and the cyber, the need for more cyber people, really. It also says, in one of the most pertinent and striking examples, Congress recently was forced to act in directing the Navy to create cyber-specific work roles, as it was the only service to date that had not done so. Navy service members were rotating too frequently in and out of cyber mission force, creating continuity issues, forcing retraining, and ultimately readiness issues. So that's another issue that happens with the military, is people go in and out of these jobs, right? So maybe they retrain to another job, they retrain to cyber, they get out of the military, right? All of these kinds of things. And so you have this kind of revolving door where people are coming in, people are leaving, and it's different necessarily sometimes than like a company, right? Because there's just different priorities that you would see in a company versus like the military, but it's a real concern. You want people that have that continuity, especially like in the military, right? People are signing up for 4-year contracts, 6-year contracts, whatever, right? Like there's different lengths of contracts. And so if they're going to be in the service for that long, especially, they're committing that much time to the service, you really want to try to build up that continuity and have people that are going to make impacts because they're going to be in those roles for a while. Create processes, advance through the ranks, train new people, create standard operating procedures, SOPs, right? Do all these things. And if they're rotating too quickly, that's a real challenge, right? So this is definitely an article worth reading if you're interested in knowing more about the military and kind of how they're dealing with cybersecurity. But really, if you're just trying to learn about, that rotating staff, in a company even, right? Like this can help you kind of understand a little bit more about what they're trying to struggle through, because that's a real issue in companies too, right? You'll lose people after, you hear people leaving after like 6 months, a couple months, right? Like there are people very short term in jobs. Obviously, that's not what you want from an employer standpoint, but that's not really what we're talking about necessarily. But you'll have people that leave short term. You'll have people that leave after several years and have kind of that knowledge of being there for so long and seeing all these things change. And it's just a really interesting kind of, situation. And that obviously creates risk in organizations, especially if they don't document a lot of things or they leave with some of that knowledge. If you spend a lot of money on them, trying to get them trained up, and then all of a sudden they leave, and you've just basically blown all that money doing nothing because, the person didn't stick around to really do anything. So there's a lot of insight that everybody can get from that article for sure. All right, next article here. China bans Intel and AMD processors in government computers. China has introduced guidelines that bar the use of US processors from AMD and Intel in government computers and servers, the Financial Times has reported. The new rules also block Microsoft Windows and foreign database products in favor of domestic solutions, marking the latest move in a long-running tech trade war between the two countries. Government agencies must now use safe and reliable domestic replacements for AMD and Intel chips. The list includes 18 approved processors, including chips from Huawei and the state-backed company Phytium, both of which are banned in the U.S. The moves are China's most aggressive yet to restrict the use of U.S.-built technology. Last year, Beijing prohibited domestic firms from using Micron chips in critical infrastructure. Meanwhile, the U.S. has banned a wide range of Chinese companies ranging from chip manufacturers to aerospace firms. The Biden administration has also blocked U.S. companies like NVIDIA from selling AI and other chips to China. So I don't know how much you know about like imports and exports and the differences with countries and how they, kind of battle it out. But especially like with the United States and China, there is always this conflict, especially with like technology kind of things. And this is really no different, right? There's certain restrictions on things that you can import and export, and that's just how it is, right? One of the things too that I'll say is, especially around like import and export, you see this with things like TikTok, right? Where there is this huge concern that companies that are importing products into your country, that they will spy on you or they will, use your data somehow. We saw this actually very controversial with Lenovo several years ago, that their computers were coming preloaded with a lot of software and things, right, that probably shouldn't be there. And, with Lenovo is a huge issue, right? And so we've seen this actually play out with other technologies. But, this is not really any different. And with this, especially like NVIDIA, right? So blocking NVIDIA from being able to sell chips or sell graphics GPUs to China, that is definitely an effort in my eyes to prevent them from developing more artificial intelligence, right? ChatGPT, those kinds of things. Because NVIDIA obviously makes super powerful GPUs, and those are used for those kinds of activities. So if they can't internally create their own products that are similar or comparable to what NVIDIA does, that's going to give us in the United States a competitive advantage, or really anybody that has those chips, right? Because NVIDIA is going to sell to other countries and other locations and things like that. But it is always interesting to see this kind of battle, this back and forth. I do wonder if maybe this is somehow tied to TikTok, right? Because, obviously TikTok is in the news and there is a lot of controversy and, really uncertainty if TikTok will be available in the United States or other countries, right? A lot of other countries are starting to have similar kind of complaints as well. But another interesting article for sure. So with that being said, that is the last article for today's episode. Again, on this episode, we were streaming to LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, trying it out. Looks like we had a pretty decent turnout as far as viewers across the board, which is awesome. So we will definitely look at continuing that trend. If you're interested in actually seeing the articles that we covered, make sure to go to cyberthreatintel.com. Again, cyberthreatintel.com. That's where you can find the article feed for all the articles that we covered and more. You'll also be able to see all the podcasting platforms that we're on. Again, we're on all the major ones, so Spotify, iTunes, and a whole bunch of others, right? But if you want to see the live stream and participate, make sure to check out those platforms that we're on, especially YouTube. YouTube will always be the consistent one, no matter what happens. But with that being said, looks like we don't have a ton of questions going on for this episode. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and wrap it up, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good one. Are you tired of overpaying for cybersecurity training? Are you interested in training from industry professionals? Are you looking for cybersecurity career services? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then cybertrainingpro.com is the perfect platform for you. At Cybertraining Pro, we're a one-stop shop for all your cybersecurity needs. We can train you for industry certifications or just improve your overall knowledge and skills in a certain area. Unlike other platforms, we don't stop there. We can also coach you throughout your career, practice your interview skills, or create a high-performing resume with our career services. Cybertrainingpro.com isn't just another training platform. Students get exclusive access to our private community, where we go beyond training courses to provide additional content, tips and tricks, and engagement with both other students and staff. Look, by the year 2025, there could be as many as 3.5 million job openings in cybersecurity. With so much opportunity, why not maximize your career potential with a platform that cares about your success? Come join us at Cybertraining Pro.